Rain, Rain by Anne Martin. Chapter 29. What Not to Do When You Think of a New Homonym. On Monday, the weather is gray and wet. I think that if Rain is still lost outside, she must be cold. Maybe she's shivering. Mrs. Cushel hands out review sheets for math. One arithmetic problem after another. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I like these sheets. They are very organized. 3 columns of 10 problems on each sheet. The problems look easy, so my mind wanders. I start thinking about Rain, and then I can't stop thinking about her. This makes me feel sad, so I decide to count all the prime numbers on the first page. 23, I announce to Mrs. Liebler. The room is silent except for my voice. 23 prime numbers just on this page, and guess what? 23 is a prime number too. Rose, Mrs. Liebler looks straight into my eyes and says quietly, "Are you having trouble concentrating? You haven't solved a single problem." "Yes, I am having trouble concentrating." "Then let's just take things one at a time. What do you do here?" She taps her fingernail on the first problem in the top row. I look at it. 247 times 3. I know I'm supposed to multiply the 7 and the 3, but my brain isn't seeing 7 or 3 or 21 either. It's seeing rain. Rain lost in the rain, wet and cold and shivering and hungry. "Rose," says Mrs. Liebler again. Now she taps my arm with her fingernail. Tap, tap, tap. Her red painted nail tapping on my skin. I jerk my arm away. "Rose, stop! Stop it!" I see Mrs. Cushel and Mrs. Liebler glance at each other. Then Mrs. Liebler says, "Time for a break in the hall," and she leads me through the door. "Break and break are homonyms," I announce as I slump to the floor. "Take some time to collect your thoughts," says Mrs. Liebler. "You need a quiet moment." Time and time, Mrs. Liebler puts her finger to her lips. Shh. I try to control my thoughts. When I feel calmer, I say to Mrs. Liebler, "I feel calmer." Okay then. She opens the door and I return to my desk. Mrs. Cushel leans toward me. "Are you feeling less tense, Rose?" she whispers. I widen my eyes. "Oh, oh," I cry, "tense and tense." That's a brand new pair of homonyms, a really good one. Thank you, Mrs. Cushel. I have to add those words to my list when I get home. I hope I have a space in the T section. I don't want to forget the homonyms, so I tear a sheet of paper from my notebook and carefully write tense, tense. I hear snickering. I see Josh Bartell looking at me, then looking at Parvani and rolling his eyes. Parvani looks away from him, though. She shakes her head. I think that's her way of sticking up for me. I should thank her. I open my mouth, but instead of words, what comes out is a wail. Mrs. Liebler leads me right back into the hall. If only I knew that Rain would be waiting for me after school.